First of all, before I hop into what I'm working on, I want to just shout out a couple of the projects that I have going on right now. First off is I have a bunch of my content that I have posted online that focuses specifically on Ionic framework. Please take a look at it. Not out of it. Please take a look at it. If you go to Gumroad and the future is written in code, which is FIWIC, you'll see all of my content. My course that I have on here is also on Udemy. It's usually costs less here on Futures Written in Code than it does on Udemy, because Udemy can fluctuate the price. However, right now, I believe that there is a sale on it right now over at Udemy, where I think it's running for like 12 bucks or something like that, because they have this Valentine's sale. So if you go view Ionic, I think I spelled it wrong, but let's see. Yeah, if you go view Ionic, it's running for 11 bucks. So if it's something that you think you'll benefit from, please check it out. So now we're in the marketing. The last thing is please make sure you check out my YouTube channel and like and subscribe. I have a bunch of different content there that's specifically focused on Ionic framework. I've done a boatload of Vue stuff the last month or so. I popped back to React because I'm working on a React project at work. And along with that, I have been mostly using React hook form, which is this guy. Let's pop this up to show them some love, because they've been kind of who I've been working with pretty much since I really started doing Ionic stuff. React hook form, it's a pretty cool way to do form management, form validation, and things like that. Ever since I was doing that work, I always get asked, hey, how come you don't try Formik? Why haven't you tried Formik? So I'm like, hey, let me just give Formik a try. So that's what this is. Formik's another tool that allows you to kind of build forms and kind of do form validation with it. And along with Formik, to actually do the validation, they use a tool called Yup. And so we'll see some examples of Yup used with Formik to do form validation. And then the last kind of shout out goes to, first of all, Ionic framework, because I am using Ionic framework here, but also to StackBlitz. StackBlitz is an awesome tool. It allows me to create this Ionic framework React application inside the browser. So sample code, I can share it to people. And like I said, I'll post a link for this so you guys can just go to the link and actually run the project and kind of walk through it yourself. To save time of typing, I'm just going to kind of walk through the application, show you what it does, explain what I've done in the source code, and hopefully it'll be enough to encourage you to give it a try the next time you have a form to build. So let's get to what we got going on. First, let's talk about the app, and then we'll kind of walk through the code. So this is just a basic form application that takes a name, an email address, uses Ionic component to allow you to select the color, and then you also use the date range for you to select the start date and for you to select an end date. And then the idea is that only when all the data is filled out. So if I enter all the data and you click save, once an email there. And you click save, not only do you see the data down here, but you notice this time when I click save, we get a alert that indicates that we have all the data that we need, and these fields have been validated. So you can see if I remove, so you saw that first of all the name's required, and then the name needs to be a certain amount of characters, so we can track that as a requirement. And we even have the ability to, I'm going to have to reset this. We even have the ability to validate that we have a form, a select option, an option selected, and also a date. So if you see, if I reset the form directly, and I don't have default value set for this option or for start date or end date, and I attempt to save, first of all, it recognizes that all of these fields are required and there's no data there. Then let me put something here, RON. So that one's good now. But it still can detect that I haven't selected a value here. Even if I select and hit cancel, nothing. Let's pick a date. It sees that we have a start date. Let's put my end date. Save. Also, I'm tracking down here so you can see the errors that it's detecting on my form. And then finally, I can select my color. I have no errors. Here's all my values. And when I hit save, I get all the values. So that's the basic UI. What we have right here is Well, first let's start with yup, because that'll be pretty straightforward. So what you do is you create a validation schema, and in the validation schema you define first of all what your fields are. So I have an email field, name, color, start, end, and then off of yup you can create the schema for the object. And so what this says is that email is a string, it can be nullable. We're not using this. Actually, sorry. It's checking to see if there's an email. If it is an email address, if it isn't a valid email address, this is the message. So basically, this is the validation, and then this is the message that goes along if the validation fails. Huge, pretty great documentation. Tons of examples here that kind of explains how you can use all of the features of yup. So I'm not going to go too deep into that. You can check it out there. But basically, just wanted to show you that all I'm really using is like for email, checking that to valid email. Down here, you can check the min-max and check the size of it, but mostly it's just saying that the fields are required. So with Formik, you set up your validation schema. But now if we hop down into the code, what you can see is we start at the top level with this Formik component that kind of wraps my whole form and then returns a set of properties that I can utilize inside of my form. This is how I'm using Formik, and as you can see, I'm setting all my initial values here to null. One of the reasons why I'm doing this is so that I can get the value of the IntelliSense, so that you can see as I kind of hover over these things, it knows what all my properties are, and I can get access to them there. The other thing that we're doing is after we set our initial values, we have to define what the validation schema is. And so here's a schema that is leveraged from the work that's done up top. And then the next step after that is this alert dialog that shows us if I've successfully entered the form and all of the validations pass, then display a list of what the accepted values are. These are the required properties that you need to kind of pass into this top level Formik component. As you can see, this component wraps the actual form. Because I needed some of these properties outside of the form, I just wrapped the whole Ion content. But if we go down to the bottom here, you can see where my Formik component ends, and the whole Ion content is a child of Formik. Let's just kind of go through a couple of the fields here, and then it doesn't make sense to go to all of them. Most of them are text fields, but just to give you a basic idea, and also I wanted to keep this explanation relatively short if possible. The catch that we normally have with some of these tools are, because Ionic Components has the shadow DOM and there's other things going on, usually you don't get it to work exactly the way you want to work. The way that this is handled with Formik is that it just gives you the values that you need. So specifically here, the one that usually trips us up is this ion change. And so all we're saying is that when you get the ion change event, you call the Formik property to support handling change. When you need the value, you call the Formik property to get the actual value. And the important part is to make sure that you name the element. You can see, and then what happened is also Formik props. This Formik props that we're getting kind of passed in to our child component has some helper properties and functions. So here we're trying to determine if this field has been touched, and the field name, and if the field has been touched and there's an error, then display what the error is. So this pattern is what's kind of been repeated throughout the whole form. The email is a little bit different because, as you saw from up here in the schema, we're supporting two different things. A, to check if it, email. A, to check if it's a valid email, and then also to indicate that it's required. One that usually trips us up with these type of tools are things like the ion select, but it's still straightforward. You just specify the odd change, the handle change, and the color, and the same thing with the error. Now, the one other thing that I wanted to show you was sometimes when you get these unwieldy forms that are extremely large, the whole idea is that you don't want to embed all of the form fields and information in just one ginormous component. So what I did, just to kind of demonstrate how to get the actual Formik context from inside another field, I created this component called custom date range. All custom date ranges, let's hop over to that. All custom date ranges really is just two date time fields. One gives us the start and one gives us the end. You could probably do some more interesting things with the UI to make it look better, but the basic concept is we're trying to encapsulate capturing two dates in a separate component outside of our form. but we want Formik to be able to kind of manage these form fields as if they are part of the huge form on the main page. So the way you handle that is you can actually get access to Formik context. The thing that's important to realize is that you can only get access to Formik context if you are embedded inside of a Formik form. And I tried using the useFormik and other approaches using the hooks, but the only way I could actually get this useFormik context to work was if my component that I'm working with, this custom date range, was sitting inside of a Formik component. So as you can see, my custom date range is inside of the inside the Formik component, so I can get access to the context. So if we go back to the date range, and you can see here, we say use Formik context. The thing that we want to get access to is properties on our field and metadata on our field. So we need to handle setting the value and setting the onChange handler the exact same way that we did back here in tab 1. See Formik change handler and Formik values, and that's what these helper functions do. So this get field props allows us to say get fields prop start and then give me the value and assign the value, and then the same thing for the onChange. Get fields prop start onChange, and so what will happen is that the onChange event that is fired off by onDateTime will then get passed on to this get fields prop, and then the value that we need will also come from inside the start here. We're just basically duplicating that for the end date, changing the value for the end date. So we get this nice little JSON object that'll have all the fields that we need in it. And then down here in the bottom, we're encapsulating the error handling inside of our child custom date range also, where we're checking to see if actually this is an error right here, there should be end. We're checking to see if the component has been touched, and if it's been touched, what's the error associated with it. And this is all, once again, handled by just getting the Formik context. So you could imagine breaking out a series of more complex components that are needed for form entry and managing them in separate components instead of just having this one huge form with all the data in it. Overall, I was pretty impressed with how easy it was to integrate Formik. There's one other thing that I'll try with it that I do with reactjs form a couple of times, and that's dealing with form arrays and dynamically adding values to forms. So probably I'll do another short video on how that works with Formik, so then you guys can look at the two videos and compare them. But that's pretty much what we got. One last time, we have the ability to check for errors. So I'm hitting save. It's determining there's no errors. Let's go back here to my tab. And if you notice, we're not even getting to the onSubmit. What this library does, it won't call the onSubmit unless there's no errors. We start to enter all the fields. No cap locks. We enter our color. We save. We're still getting the error that there's no date. Enter our end date. Done. Save. Still no start date. Start date. Done. Everything's good, and then we get the results. Hopefully you can find some value in this. I think the interesting part really is just kind of breaking out this custom date range component and how you can use the Formik context to get it work. I think also it's pretty nice how easy it is to actually integrate it to your components by just setting the value and handling the onChange. And I'll wrap it right there. Like I said, please check out my YouTube channel for other videos. We have tons of content on Ionic framework, reactjs, and Vue specifically. Anything else you'd like to see, leave a comment and let me know. And thanks, and enjoy the video. Bye now.